Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? JP, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? Evening Miles of CMF, good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles. Jeff, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Joe, evening Miles of CMF, good to see you as well. Joe, how you doing? How you been? Mike, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? What's up, Miles? What's up, CMF? Kerry, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Hey, brother Miles and CMF, Comatose, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? How's everyone doing today? Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you as well. Morning, how you doing? How you been? Mike, good. Let's go. Okay, let's do intro, disclaimer, by that time everyone's tuned in for the first part of the live. And on tonight's live, we're mostly going to be talking about regulations. There's a lot of regulations happening inside the United States right now. And obviously we have the tariffs news that's coming out as well. The newest tariffs that's coming out today, it's going to be announced later on, essentially. And we have the PCE data that's coming out on Friday, which the market is anticipating for it. And the market has reacted slightly negative towards it, especially the S&P 500 and the crypto market space, because they're anticipating that data is going to come out quite bad. And they're also anticipating that the tariff situation, the new tariff situation, is also going to play out bad. So the market is already pricing in that negativity or that volatile stage of the market space. Dennis, good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? Even if Miles and CMF, Pierce, good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? But it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of actually brilliant things happening behind the scenes in terms of regulations, which we're going to go through on tonight's live. Hi, brother. Thanks for the call earlier. No problem. Come on. Anytime, brother. Welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. I'm hosting a live that you're watching right now. You can tune into this live Monday to Friday, where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, and regulations. Vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. We also do Q&As on this live as well, which means if you do have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. We're more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And a disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever. If you're regular, let's go CMF. By the way, I'm just getting notifications right now from X. Thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who has liked this live. If you're watching this on X, thanks so much to every single one of you who's liked this live, who's retweeted this live, who's put a comment outside the live as well, and liked each other's comments on X. And if you're watching us on YouTube as well, thank you so much to everybody who's liked the live as well. If you haven't done that, CMF members, just take a second, depending on where you are on X or on YouTube, just to like and retweet as well, and like each other's comments if possible, and then come back into the live. We'll take you 1 second, we'll boost the live as well so we can grow this family bigger and bigger every day. Morning, Miles and CMF. Solomon, good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles. Why is XRP dipping, though? Time to rock it now. Johnny, good to see you. How you doing? Regarding why XRP is slightly dimming down is because the market is dimming down in general. Again, it goes back to, we don't have regulations. There's a lot of tariff news situations happening. We don't have regulations, which means we're going to follow Bitcoin's footsteps. Now, the Ripple case is obviously coming to an end due to what was announced yesterday regarding essentially Ripple and the SEC coming to a conclusion where Ripple pays $50 million, which we discussed as well, and that essentially both going to get to walk away free after Ripple paying $50 million, and the injunction is lifted, which means XRP can be sold to essentially institutions and essentially business or establishments, and it won't be considered securities in any sort of a way, which is brilliant on that matter. But the reason why XRP's price is dipping right now, it's because the whole market is dipping slightly due to two situations. One, the PCA reports that are coming out on Friday. The market has already anticipated that's going to be bad news, which means they're pricing in the situation right now. Second, the tariff news, which we're going to essentially go through on tonight's live, which is the first news we're going to go through on tonight's live, regarding the automobile tariffs. And obviously, 2nd of April is not that far away either, which is going to be major, essentially, tariff news happening around the world. So the market in general is just following Bitcoin's price point, and it's just because we don't have regulations yet, which means we're going to follow Bitcoin's footsteps for the time being still. Hi, Miles, the CMF. George, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Hey, Miles, what's up? The price glitch on XRP, that happened a day or two ago. Yes, that's true. When it was on some American news channel, the price of XRP glitched out and it showed roughly $21,000. And it's not the first time XRP has glitched out on market spaces. It's glitched out before on Uphold. It's glitched out on essentially Bitwise exchange and a few other exchanges out there as well throughout the years, essentially. Good evening, Miles. How is things? Cali, things are great. Good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, CMF and Miles. Denise, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Kerry says we're assuming that the $50 million will be paid to XRP and he's going to Street Reserve, correct? The $50 million that the SEC is receiving, as far as we know so far, is going to be $50 million, not $50 million worth of XRP. Technically, it's the $125 million that was set aside in an escrow by Ripple themselves for this SEC versus Ripple case. So that money is going to be coming out of the $125 million that was set aside by an escrow account a long time ago, essentially when we got the first verdict from the case. But then Gary Gensler decided to appeal the case and Ripple decided not to pay out. Reason for the glitch. The reason for the glitch of XRP, and again, it's not the first time XRP has glitched out on a news channel or on an exchange. There are many reasons behind it, but one of them is that obviously XRP has two chains. One is the private chain, one is the public chain. Now, the private chain is mostly used for test payments. So the thought pattern behind it is sometimes the private chain is showing, and that's why it's glitching out on price points. And it's not the first time it's glitched out. It's glitched out multiple times throughout the years. Possible it can reach that price. Is it possible that the XRP can reach the price point of $21,000+ per token? Yes, very possible. Not overnight, but over time, yes, very possible. Good evening, Miles of CMF. Ring Feather, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Now, the first news essentially to go through on tonight's live is regarding Trump's new announcement. So the reason why the crypto markets are slightly volatile, not extremely volatile, but slightly volatile, is because President Trump is going to be announcing new automobile tariffs today. And the market has priced that in as a negative. So here it is. President Donald Trump will announce new tariffs on auto imports today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time inside the Oval Office. And the White House Press Secretary Caroline has also said on Wednesday morning that the announcement will arrive just days before the official rollout of Trump's larger trade plan, which is around April 2nd. Now, speaking at essentially the cabinet meeting, Trump confirmed that the auto tariffs would drop fairly soon over the next few days, probably, and made clearer that they would land before April 2nd, which has essentially repeatedly described as a tariffs day, essentially. The White House told reporters that today's announcement is a part of a broader trade of the overall targeting countries that apply import duties to the U.S. goods. Now, Trump has spent years teasing an aggressive approach to trade and said his team has been preparing a set of retaliation tariffs that would hit nations essentially taxing U.S. products. The plan, originally pitched as a country-by-country essentially response, would essentially match foreign duties and also essentially respond to what Trump called as essentially a disfavored trade policy, because the U.S. has always been tariffed by multiple countries, and now the tables are turning where the U.S. is tariffing those countries in return. But the news makes it look like, and especially American news, CNN News, for example, makes it look like Trump is the bad guy. But the reality of it is, on paper, America was being tariffed by all these nations for the longest time. Biden's administration did nothing absolutely about it. Obama's administration did absolutely nothing about it. And a few of the presidents did absolutely nothing about it as well. Trump is the only president that's taken action to essentially switch the tables around and re-tariff them instead. Now, would match foreign duties and also respond to what Trump called disfavored trade policies, including value-added taxes, VATs, wage suppressions, and currency manipulation. Now, April 2nd has been hyped repeatedly by Trump. He's labeled it both essentially a Liberation Day and the big one, a reference to his long-standing promise to take direct action against essentially what he calls an unfair trade practices by other nations around the world. And the tariff plan was described as an attempt to level the playing fields. But over the past several days, Trump and his team have taken a softer tone, you could say, up to a certain extent, agreement. Last Friday, Trump told reporters there will be flexibility in how essentially tariffs are applied. Then during essentially a Tuesday night interview with essentially Newsmax, he stated, I'll probably be more lenient than reciprocal, because if I was reciprocal, that would be very tough for people. And he followed up with, I know there are some expectations and it's an ongoing discussion, but not too many expectations. Treasury Secretary Scott Benson weighed in also about this matter as well, confirming that some countries could avoid penalties if they pre-negotiate with the US government before this essentially April 2nd deadline. A lot of countries are actually waving the white flag, as I revealed yesterday. The United Kingdom has already started waving the white flag. Italy is waving the white flag as well. And a few other European countries, a few Asian countries, and some Middle Eastern countries are already having sit-downs or trying to get sit-downs with the White House, because they don't want to be essentially highly tariffed when April 2nd comes around, because every country is going to be highly tariffed. Now, the White House then told CNBC Iman Javers that non-tariff barriers like VATs and currency manipulation will no longer factor in how tariffs rates are calculated, and that change makes a significant retreat from Trump's essentially earlier theoretic, which promised a much more stricter approach towards these nations. VATs are a consumption taxes collected at each stage of the production and are essentially common in many countries. Trump's original plan involved retaliating against those as well, but the part of the policy has been dropped. Now, the back and forth has created uncertainty among businesses and investors, and Trump's habit of making policy changes at the last minute, often through off-the-cuff essentially remarks or late-night interviews, has made it hard for companies to prepare themselves. Many are still unclear about which countries will face heavier tariffs compared to the rest. And in recent weeks, the financial markets have responded with visible anxiety, you could even say. On Tuesday, the Conference Board reported that its index measures consumer expectations on jobs, businesses, and incomes fell to a 12-year low. The drop comes amid increased fears of global trade fights, and the report shows that both consumer and businesses are growing concerned about the economic outlooks. Stocks haven't fared any better. The S&P 500 has fallen 3% over the essentially past month. That dip pushed the index into a correction territory, meaning it briefly dropped more than 10% below its most recent highs, which was recorded in February. Analysts essentially blame the tariff drama for fueling as they decline, which is not true in any sort of a way. A correction inside the stock market could have some factors in a tariff situation play, but not entirely could be essentially blamed on tariffs. Corrections happen inside the market space all the time. So you can't blame corrections in the stock market as tariffs issues only. Corrections just happen inside the market space. They happen inside the crypto space. They happen inside essentially the stock market. They happen inside the real estate market space. When prices get adjusted, essentially they happen in gold. So you can't blame just tariffs because of corrections inside the market space. As today's press conference approaches, the Trump administration has said little about the actual numbers behind the new auto tariffs that are going to be coming out today. The White House has not confirmed which countries will be affected and how steep the duties will be, or whether essentially any trade partners have already been granted exemptions. Leavitt essentially told reporters only that details will be provided during the president's remarks for now. So that is essentially why the crypto market is slightly volatile today, because we're about to be getting new announcements of automobile tariffs. Now, the United States obviously does, produce and manufacture vehicles which they ship out to all around the world. However, the European countries, the United Kingdom, and some Middle Eastern countries and some Asian countries have always highly taxed or essentially tariffs American vehicles. Trump doesn't see this as a fair situation, because you have European cars coming into the United States and they're not getting the same tariff treatment that American cars are getting in Europe or in other countries around the world. So the only thing Trump is trying to do is level the playing field. But CNN calls this bullying towards Europe or the United Kingdom and so on. And other countries essentially, other news channels like NBC News, The View, or whatever, they're all calling it as Trump is bullying the European Union, he's bullying the United Kingdom, he's bullying Asian countries or Middle Eastern countries. And in reality, he's not, because for some reason, it's like the news is allergic to facts. Genuinely, some news channels or journalists are just allergic to facts. The United States has been heavily tariffed by these nations for their vehicles. So Trump is trying to level the playing field. But because of this, the market is already pricing in volatility stages, which is why the stock market dropped slightly. And also the crypto market dropped slightly because they're pricing this as a negative situation. And on the other question I was asked a little bit earlier on, which was regarding, the price of XRP is dipping. Isn't it supposed to go up now? Well, technically, yes, XRP should be doing slightly well for itself, but the case isn't completely gone. But both, essentially, the Ripple and the SEC have filed in for the case to be finished and done and dusted with the injunction being lifted, essentially, and also with, Ripple paying a $50 million fine to make it completely go away. However, again, we don't have rules and regulations inside the crypto market space, but obviously a lot of essentially situations are being done to bring in rules and regulations as fast as possible, as I revealed yesterday night on this live, where the SEC has already set up 4 to 5 roundtables, public roundtables. They're going to live it, essentially they're going to air it completely live, with the SEC having roundtables talking about a few factors inside the crypto space. And we have certain regulations being adjusted and removed to better the crypto space as well. So it's not all doom and gloom with the whole tariff situation. And as I said previously, tariffs are just temporarily in terms of the volatility stages going to create inside the market space. And the tariff situation is actually working out in favor of the United States, because the amount of countries that have decided to wave the white flag, or the amount of companies that decide to wave the white flag, is tremendous. A lot of manufacturing is actually coming back inside the United States because of Trump's policies on tariffs, and it's going to create a lot more jobs for the United States citizens, which it's in favor of them in the long term. But that is essentially what's been priced in and caused the market to become slightly volatile today. The automotive essentially industry is going to be heavily tariffed by the United States, by Trump, for any country that has tariffed the United States back. So, for example, you have Mercedes, BMW, Audi vehicles entering the US, not being tariffed as much. But then you have Chevrolet, Dodge, Jeep, or any other manufacturer from the United States entering into the EU, for example, and they're being heavily tariffed, which means EU citizens won't buy American cars and will rather buy European cars because they're not essentially tariffed because they're in-house produced, which Trump is just trying to level the playing field. But then, NBC News, CNN, and all that, they'll make it look like he's bullying the EU. In reality, he's not. But this is why I say sometimes, news channels or journalists are just allergic to telling the truth. If they told the truth more often, it'd be better, because then people will have a better idea of what's actually happening and not what is happening in La La Land, according to journalists from the Liberals or the Democratic Party. Good evening, Miles of CMF. Forever good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? But that's what is essentially caused the volatile stage inside the market space today. Evening, Miles of CMF. Manny, good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles. I hope you're well, mate. Watch the last 2 recorded lives in daytime. There's some great crypto news starting to come out. It definitely is. Adi, let's go facts. They are allergic to Trump. Facts. They're definitely allergic to Trump. And regarding news channels, they're definitely allergic to Trump. I mean, he's really trying to fix America's, and this is how much you could say push he's made for a pro-crypto United States. For example, Democratic politicians who have, in the past under Biden's administration, been completely negative towards the crypto space. The majority of them. There were some Democrats in Biden's administration that were actually pro-crypto, but the majority of them were very negative towards cryptocurrencies. And we saw that with their policies that they were pushing and, backing essentially Gary Gensler or so on. And then the few Democrats that did stand up to Gary Gensler, Biden's administration said they'll veto Congress in favor of Gary Gensler and the SEC. Now, on that, this is what essentially Trump has done so far. Making the SEC pro-crypto, CFTC pro-crypto, CFPB pro-crypto, OCC pro-crypto. Not only that, but obviously Republicans having a clean sweep, and they're all pro-crypto. The majority of them, 99% is all pro-crypto. Democrats are slowly turning bullish towards crypto assets. They're starting to see that there is a future in crypto assets. So here it is. Congressman Connor reports growing Democratic support for Bitcoin and crypto assets. Congressman essentially Ro Connor reports that Democratic politicians are increasingly supporting Bitcoin, with party members who favor the cryptocurrency growing from about 10 to nearly essentially 80 in recent years. Connor made these remarks at the Bitcoin Policy Institution's Bitcoin for America Summit, essentially, that according to Bitcoin Magazine report 2025, Bitcoin is transformational for so many people around the world, Connor stated at the summit, and that is why Democrat Party should be embracing it as something essentially that can create financial empowerment for people not just inside the United States, but for the entire world. Connor has long advocated for Bitcoin adoption, urging fellow Democrats to view the technology similar to other major essential technological advances like the internet, for example. And he said, my goal is to make Bitcoin a baptism. He told Bitcoin Magazine, urging that American leadership in the space allows connection with often disenfranchised people worldwide. And the congressman attributes that past democratic resistance to Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies to a lack of understanding rather than opposition. Some democratic politicians are not aware of how helpful Bitcoin or crypto assets can be with remittances, or how it can be used by essentially those who don't have access to US dollars around the world. And he also, regarding research from Coinbase showed that in the swing states during the recent presidential election that essentially happened, crypto holders outnumbered vote essentially differentials between candidates by about 10 times. When asked if this voting bloc affected essentially election results, Khan agreed that likely played a major role. In such a close essential election, everything matters, and the fact that there were so many Democrats who offended Bitcoin and crypto voters, it was not helpful. I'll be honest, it wasn't just the reason why the Democratic Party lost. It wasn't just because of crypto holders. It was in general, their policies were absolutely ridiculous. Did you know for a fact, just a slightly off topic, did you know for a fact that they recently essentially had a vote and the Democratic Party voted against it? And do you know what it was? Fentanyl. They were voting on essentially kicking out fentanyl outside of the United States and how to control the fentanyl essentially usage inside the United States so that less people are affected by drug abuse inside the United States. Republicans voted, yes, we want fentanyl outside the country. We don't want fentanyl inside the United States. Democratic politicians voted in favor of it by keeping fentanyl inside the United States. There are many reasons why Democrats lost, because their policies or what they stand for are absolutely ludicrous. That you have elected politicians thinking it's okay to keep drug abuse inside the United States. Why? Because they're affecting, essentially, they're harming. It just blows my mind that there are actually elected politicians, adults in the Democratic Party that say, yes, fentanyl is a good thing, drug abuse is a good thing inside the United States, it should stay. This is how ludicrous Democrats are. But there, as I said, there are many reasons why Democrats lost, and it wasn't just the crypto voters. But now going back into the topic, this move essentially could create a pathway for cryptocurrencies to compete with the US dollars as a global reserve currency, potentially addressing inflation concerns following essentially pandemic era monetary policies. Connor noted that the prominent Democratic voices are essentially reconsidering their stance on Bitcoin and crypto assets, and that he cited Van Jones, essentially, who stated at a New York Times Deal Book Summit in essentially December 2024 that excluding pro-Bitcoin voters hurts the Democratic Party. The party will be moving in a direction that's going to embrace Bitcoin and other technologies moving forward. So the Democratic Party has come to the conclusion that they need to embrace crypto assets going forward. Otherwise, they're just going to fall behind even more. In my point of view, Democrats are never going to win an election ever again. The way the Democratic Party is moving, in general, I don't see them winning any elections for a decade the way they're moving, because their policies are absolutely ludicrous, and what they stand for is even more ludicrous. Now, moving off, essentially, Democrats slowly, having brain cells and realizing, okay, blockchain is actually here to stay and it's going to benefit the United States and the entire world, to France. The French central bank chief has came out, but he's came out with a warning. Now, he said Trump's policies are destabilizing global economy. Up to a certain extent, yes, but also no. So here's what he said. The French central bank chief, Francisco, has came out and has said that Trump's administration is disrupting the multilateral economic system, which is hurting the American economy and to a lesser extent the European economy. His first statement, the French chief, essentially, the French's central bank chief, Francisco, his first statement was an absolute spew of lies, which was essentially Trump's administration disrupting the market space ecosystem, which is hurting the American economy and to a lesser extent the European economy. No, it's actually going to affect the European economy a lot more than it would affect the US market space. The longer the EU tries to stand, on its own 2 feet and pretend to be strong, the more the EU is going to get essentially damaged. And if the US goes down, everybody goes down. So it's not going to be lesser for the European citizens. And the biggest lie, is that Trump is trying to damage the US economy. And in reality, he's trying to fix it. It's just a lot of people can't see the bigger picture. And people like Francisco, the French central bank chief, is just lying through his teeth so he can make more American citizens hate on Trump. Genuinely, this is what these types of people do. They lie on purpose to brainwash people through news channels. Now, Francisco also informed lawmakers of the lower house of France's, essentially French Parliament's finance commissions, that Trump undermines the multilateral system with his decision as a reversal. I just want to point out one thing. The French economy is standing on one broken leg right now. In terms of the real estate market space is where it's mostly impacted for the French economy. So France is standing on one broken leg right now. And they're trying to say that Trump is, trying to make that Trump is bad and he doesn't know what he's doing in terms of economics. He's ruining the American economy. It's going to have lesser effect on France, but more effect on US citizens. And it's all lies. And it's nice to see that the French people are coming out and saying Trump is doing a bad job when the French economy is crumbling right before people's eyes. He further noted that his shift could increase long-term risk. He said these could include financial risks such as crypto assets, non-bank intermediaries, and environmental concerns. Wrong again, but okay. Since becoming essentially president of America, Trump has made several decisions, including job cuts involving the mass firing of federal agencies. The French chief, essentially, this French central bank chief, coming out, Francisco, and saying that Trump is ruining American lives, he's firing American federal job people. For the longest time, people have always said there are too many politicians. If you look at any country, if you look at the UK, the EU, if you look at it continent-wise, Africa, the EU, Asia, Middle East, North America, South America, however you want to look at it, there are too many politicians in every government. And for the longest time, people stood by that. There are too many politicians because we have so many politicians. Nothing ever gets better. Everything gets more expensive. Everything always gets more worse. We're getting worse and worse every year we go by. And for the longest time, people stood by that. A lot of people stood by that. The majority of people around the world stood by. We have too many politicians that do absolutely nothing for the people. And when Trump starts firing politicians one by one, federal agency politicians one by one, people are like, Trump is doing a bad thing. Why is he firing essentially government people? Why is he hiring? Why is he essentially firing federal agency departments and people and so on and so on? Those people did absolutely nothing for you. So I don't understand the thought pattern of how extent of people being brainwashed to come back to the stage of we need more federal workers, we need more politicians. For what? So they can take more taxpayer money off you? So this is what the French, essentially Francisco, is coming out with, the French central, essentially chief bank, coming out and saying Trump is trying to, do mass firing of federal agencies. Yes, that's a good thing. And if CNN, NBC News, The View is telling you it's a bad thing, Trump is firing, essentially federal agency workers, that's not a bad thing. That's a brilliant thing. That should be something that happens in every government around the world, to be fairly honest. Trump is doing it right by standing by it. And one notable example of Trump's policies reversals is the tariff shift, in which he issued executive orders 2 days after attacking essentially broad 25% levies on essentially 2 American closest economy partners to suspend new tariffs on many imports from Mexico and Canada. Because of this abrupt and anticipated shift, the US stock market has decreased by 1.8%. Yes, volatile stages will be created by tariffs, but it's short-term, long-term, it's better play. Now, this turnaround increases long-term risk, whether they are financial, think of crypto assets or non-bank intermediaries or climatics. He's trying to say Trump is also, essentially damaging the crypto market space. He's ruining the crypto market space. And in reality, Trump has done more for the crypto market space than any other US president or any other US administration put together. Trump's administration has signed executive orders for the US to become the capital of cryptocurrencies. Because of Trump's administration, the SEC is pro-crypto. Because of Trump's administration, the CFTC is pro-crypto. Because of Trump's administration, lawsuits were dropped like domino effects by the SEC. Because of Trump's administration, the SEC and CFTC are working together only for one purpose of crypto regulations, to bring them in faster. After a decade, they're coming to work together. Because of the Trump administration, the OCC is pro-crypto, telling banks they can start using crypto assets. Because of Trump's administration, the CFPB is now pro-crypto, telling banks to start using crypto assets. I could go on for days of because of Trump's administration, this is a positive thing happening for the crypto space. But again, you have people like the chief bank of France coming out, Francisco, and just spewing lies to add more FUD to the market space. And he added that the recent downgrade of the US Federal Reserve forecast proved that Trump's administration policies were already hurting the American economy. Lies again. Although the cost would be lower in Europe, he's lying again. It's not going to be less effect on Europe, more effect on the US. It's actually going to be more effect on Europe than it would have inside the US. The US could go on for decades and tariff in other countries. Other countries have essentially much more higher chance of going into recessions than the US does. And if the US goes into a recession, everybody goes into a recession. Because according to International Monetary Fund, if the US market space sneezes, the world market catches a cold. Although the cost would be lower in Europe, Lies stated that the second quarter increase in US tariffs would have a limited effect on European inflation and could lower the Eurozone overall economic, essentially, outputs by 0.3% over the course of a year. Just recently, France's central bank chief said President Donald Trump's policies were causing more damage to the US economy than the rest of the world. Incorrect, also lies. Francisco also added that the disruption was expected following the United States presidential election, but the economic shock had been more severe than anticipated. During a meeting with his German counterparts at the German embassy in Paris, it is a shock for the world that the economy, but even more so that the American economy. He also added that the situation was tragic for the American economy. It isn't, lies. Meanwhile, Trump threatened to impose a 200% tariff on wines, Congos, and other European alcohol imports, launching a new dispute on the ongoing trade war. Good, because France needs to be taught a lesson with the amount of lies they're putting out on the news. German central bank chief essentially compared the US administration current economic policies to something from a horror show. Why? Because the US is finally, re-tariffing the countries that were tariffing them for decades. Despite the instability, both central bankers noted that Europe could use the opportunity to strengthen its economy and attract foreign investments. It's news like this, essentially, that are adding more FUD to the market space. We have the tariff announcements coming out essentially from Trump for the automobile industry and the market priced in, which is why the crypto markets are slightly volatile. But again, tariffs are short-term volatility. Long-term, it works out for the better for the American economy and for the American people, to be fairly honest. And if America's economy is doing good, then the world's economy is doing good. If America's economy is doing bad, then the world's economy is doing bad. That's just how it goes in the most simplest factor. And I know people on social media will tell you, we don't need America, we don't need America's market space, we don't need America, and so on and so on. And it's just lies. Those people are morons that don't understand how the world operates. America's economy does good, we all do good. America's economy does bad, everybody does bad. That's just the simple factor of how it is. And it's always going to stay like that for the longest time. And people need to understand that and not go against the US market space, because Trump is actually trying to fix it. America's market space was so broken, it was genuinely standing on its last leg because of Biden's administration. It was standing on its last leg. And it had no foundation for the crypto space either, which now they're trying to build that back up. But honestly, with people like Francisco from the French central bank coming out and spewing lies on live news, grow up. You're an adult. Stop lying to people and grow up. Now, moving on from essentially Francisco trying to add more FUD to the market space, to the crypto market space as well, by trying to say Trump is trying to ruin the crypto market space. Sure, he is. Coming from France. Actually, you know what? Even better statement to make. France. Do you know what France said? So the French, essentially, chief bank coming out, Francisco, and saying Trump is trying to ruin the crypto market space. You know what France is thinking about introducing? Unrealized taxes on crypto wallets. So if you're a French citizen and you've made profits and you haven't sold your crypto assets, you're going to be paying taxes. So let me get this straight. Trump is making America capital of cryptocurrencies, made all the government agencies pro-crypto, dropped cases through the SEC back to back like a domino effect. The Ripple case finally came to an end because of Trump's policies, and every other thing that's happening for cryptocurrencies inside the United States. Looking at France, France wants to tax its citizens for holding crypto assets who haven't sold. So if you're a French citizen and you're holding crypto assets, France is thinking about taxing you even if you don't sell, which will force you to sell. So how is Trump ruining the crypto space when France is thinking about these ludicrous laws they're going to put in? That's going to ruin the crypto space for French citizens, not what Trump is doing. This is why the amount of lies inside the market space and the lies that come out of the mouths of politicians or bank governors or chief bank governors like Francisco is absolutely hilarious. It genuinely is. So how about France, instead of spewing lies about Trump, fix your own laws when it comes to cryptocurrencies? Because tax your own citizens for holding crypto assets, even if they don't sell and make a profit, is shameful. Now, moving on to GameStop, essentially. Moving off the French Francisco news with his ludicrous opinions to GameStop. Before we go through the GameStop news, let's go to the comment section first, and then we go straight into the new purchase that's coming out of GameStop towards Bitcoin, which I revealed a few days back, that GameStop is thinking about entering the market space. They're thinking about essentially entering into, purchasing certain amount of Bitcoin. They never revealed how much, but now we have some numbers to go through essentially. But before we go through that, let's go to the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to answer any questions you may have. Or if you have a statement to make, go for it inside the comment section. I read everybody's comments one by one. I read everybody's names out, and then I read out your comment. If it's a question, I give you an answer. If it's a statement, I still read it out. Miles, what's next for XRP regarding making higher prices? Alex, good to see how you're doing. What's next for XRP? Well, one, the case is coming to an end, finally. Two, we need rules and regulations, which is the second green light for XRP, as I've always said. Due to Ripple of what they're trying to achieve, being inside the financial sector, there has to be regulations put in place so there's no more gray areas for banks and essential institutions. Now, it was revealed yesterday that the FDIC is trying to remove one particular essentially section for the banking sector that was regarding the risk category. They're removing that. They're looking into ways of how to remove that so that banks could start utilizing and working with crypto companies essentially for payments purposes. So what's next for XRP is we need rules and regulations. After the case is dropped, we need rules and regulations due to the category they want to operate in. The businesses or the banks they want to operate in, they need to have rules and regulations so they don't cross any gray area situations and later on feel the repercussions of that matter. And then obviously a third step will be essentially the adoption due to the rules and regulations. And obviously rules and regulations will cause a decoupling situation from Bitcoin, which is even better. We don't have to follow Bitcoin's footsteps anymore. But this year is all about rules and regulations. It is all about essentially America becoming the capital of cryptocurrencies, and CBDC releases that's going to be happening around the world from like Brazil, Russia, and so on and so on. But in general, what's next for XRP? Case getting dropped this year. It's happening. It's final. Rules and regulations is this year. Those rules and regulations should benefit XRP, and it should help the price point essentially start climbing due to adoption rates. And we have heard it from essentially Bank of America's CEO that banks are ready to start utilizing crypto assets. And ETFs for XRP should be coming out this year as well. So a lot of things are happening for XRP. Positive things. Greetings, Miles and CMF. Hope all is well. Ray, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Orphan, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Happy Pisces, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? I was reading from an Italian source that a crypto millionaire brought a mega villa in Sardinia, and I thought maybe it's Miles giving us the news tonight. Orphan, let's go. Hey, Miles and CMF. Sorry I'm late. I've just got out of the Wednesday night church service. Stormy, no problem. Good to see you. How you doing? And God bless. Greetings, Miles and CMF. Lena, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Now, GameStop. And a few days ago on this live, I revealed that GameStop is thinking about entering the blockchain space and entering the crypto space. and creating themselves a portfolio. The first crypto they're going to be purchasing is Bitcoin. And we didn't know what the amount was going to be or how they're going to raise the money. Now we have an idea because they've actually released their blueprints. And it's similar to MicroStrategy or strategy nowadays. So here it is. GameStop embarks on an ambitious Bitcoin investment strategy. In a bold move, GameStop Corp has announced plans to raise $1.3 billion through a private offering of convertible senior notes, with a significant portion of the proceeds essentially earmarked for the acquisition of Bitcoin. This strategic decision mirrors the approach pioneered by Michael Saylor. Essentially, it's the exact same steps strategy has been taken on essentially raising money for Bitcoin by doing it through convertible notes. Now, GameStop's decision to integrate Bitcoin into its treasury reserve follows a unanimous approval that did come from its boards to update the company's investment policies. The move is a part of a broader effort to diversify its financial assets and explore new opportunities inside the cryptocurrency market space. The convertible notes, set to mature on April 1st, 2030, are designed as a general unsecured obligation that do not bear regular, essentially, interest. And upon conversion, GameStop has the flexibilities to settle in cash if they want to somewhere down the line. Shares of its Class A common stock or a combination of both. The company has also granted initial purchasers an option to acquire an additional $200 million in notes within a 13-day period, potentially increasing the total raise to $1.5 billion is what they're trying to raise. This financial maneuver marks a significant shift in GameStop's strategy, aligning with the company's trend of essentially adopting into Bitcoin as a reserve asset. The announcement sparked a notable surge in GameStop stock, which rose about 11.6% during essentially Wednesday's trading session, though it did experience a slight correction in after-hours trading due to the announcements of the automobile tariff situation. As GameStop joins the ranks of companies embracing cryptocurrencies, it reflects a broader market trend where businesses are increasingly essentially exploring alternative investment strategies to enhance their financial portfolios. So GameStop is about to be joining the ranks of essentially MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet, or the two Canadian companies that have the same exact footsteps of creating a Bitcoin portfolio for themselves and raising the money through convertible notes. They're going to be raising $1.5 billion. They haven't, essentially stated that the entire $1.5 billion is going to be going towards essentially Bitcoin. In most cases, the majority definitely is what they're essentially stated. Now, moving on from GameStop to quite a major announcement. 30 crypto companies are calling on Congress for clarity on money transmitter rules. Now, this money transmitter rules is going to be very beneficial for projects like XRP, XLM, XDC, and so on. So, over 30 crypto companies, led by DeFi Education Fund, are urging Congress to address the Department of Justice's interpretation of money transmitter laws, which they say could expose non-custodial software developers to criminal liability as well. In a letter sent to key lawmakers, including essentially Senate Banking Committee Chairman Tim Scott and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, the industry argues that the DOJ stance on Section 1960, first introduced in August 2023, deviates from existing Treasury Department guidance. The signatures on this letter include firms like Coinbase is one of the 30 firms, Paragon, Kraken, and a lot more other firms. 30 major crypto blockchain firms come together, sign the document, send a letter to send off to Congress to say, look, we need to sort out this rules and regulations mess ASAP. Claim that the interpretation discarded the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network's 2019 guidelines, which state that developers who do not take custody of user funds are not money transmitters, essentially money transmitters. And the DOJ's new policy position creates confusion and essentially ambiguity with the spectrum of criminal liability. The letter states essentially every blockchain developer could be prosecuted as a criminal, which is stupid because DeFi space is quite difficult to essentially say, you are liable for it. So if you create a DeFi, this is what they're essentially arguing for. If you create a DeFi platform, or if anybody creates a DeFi platform, and people use that DeFi platform for good, so let's just say it's transfers, purchasing certain tokens, and so on. And if certain people use that DeFi platform for bad purposes, then the person that created the DeFi platform could be sued and prosecuted as a criminal, which is very stupid, to be fairly honest. It's like Mercedes creates a vehicle. Some people will use that vehicle to get from A to B, and some people might use that vehicle for essentially the accident situations that happen where people get hit suddenly by a car. Is Mercedes liable for a driver hitting essentially a pedestrian when he's driving? No, Mercedes is not liable. Mercedes produced a car, which means the user essentially is liable, not the person who produced the car. It's very simply put. So this is essentially what these 30 companies are essentially fighting for. Because, if somebody uses, Ethereum's chain for bad purposes, or XRP Ledger for bad purposes, or XLM's chain, or AVAX's chain, or Ton's chain for bad purposes, they shouldn't be prosecuting those chains. They should be prosecuting the people who use it for bad intentions, not the people essentially who created the chain, or who are essentially, the node operators, or so on and so on, which makes a lot of sense because that law is absolutely moronic. Now, Section 1960 of the US Code criminalizes the operation of unlicensed money transmitting businesses. However, crypto firms argue that this should apply only to custodial services that actually hold and transfer users' funds, not custodial software providers. Courts have essentially historically referenced FinCEN regulations to determine compliance, but the DOJ's essentially recent legal actions, such as those against Tornado Cash developers, suggest a broader interpretation that could lead to more prosecutions. So there were essentially certain developers that created Tornado Cash. If you're inside the crypto space, you would know what Tornado Cash is. If you weren't, the most simplest way to put it, Tornado Cash was a DeFi platform that people would use for bad intentions, and some people would use for good intentions. What actually happened was the developers of Tornado Cash were the ones that were prosecuted. Even though some people use their platform for bad intentions and some people use it for good intentions, they didn't prosecute the users, they prosecuted the developers because some people decided to use it for bad intentions. The letter warns that unless Congress intervenes, US crypto innovation could be stifled, pushing developers overseas if they don't clarify that it's not the developer's fault, it's the user's fault if they use it for bad intentions. The federal government should not be playing a game of bait and switch. The letter reads, Congress should argue the DOJ to correct this misapplication of the law and clarify Section 1960 to essentially more clearly, so that not only Congress, but also crypto firms have a better idea moving forward on that matter. Now, moving on, essentially from the 30 companies that came together inside the crypto space to do this, good on them, all of them, for coming together to do this for the crypto space, to a bank news. Custodial Bank is launching its first US bank-issued stablecoin on Ethereum, out of all chains. With an odd one there. But with conventional banking systems and the blockchain industry, Custodial Bank, along with Vantage Bank, facilitated the tokenization of the US dollar deemed deposits on a public permissionless blockchain. So the first stablecoin you could technically say coming out of a US bank is this one. This innovative event that occurred on essentially 25th of March 2025 indicates a major shift in the financial sector by bringing essentially in stablecoins that are fully regulated and issued against the US dollar bank deposits. Custodial Bank is set to launch the Avet stablecoin, which will enable the programmable and transparent payments of digital dollars utilizing blockchain public blockchains such as Ethereum, hence essentially transforming payments and cross-border transactions. Now, Custodial Bank's collaboration with Vantage Bank set the pace for cross-border transactions on public essentially blockchains for cross-border payments, and Vantage Bank's collaboration with Custodial Bank resulted in its first issuance, transfer, and redemption of stablecoins on the permissionless blockchain. The two banks deployed Ethereum's ERC20 standard for token issuance and management, essentially, of Aviat stablecoins, making a major growth in the fusion of blockchain technology and traditional finance as well. In an official statement released, Vantage Bank provided the stablecoin reserves and Fedwire and ACH transfer services, completing essentially the other 7 steps that the transaction was separated into. This particular essentially customer was able to withdraw their Avian token from self-custody conducted bank essentially permissionless B2B transactions and exchange the tokens for a dollar deposit. The entire operation was within the bounds of legal requirements as both banks operated under the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering regulations, as well as obviously the Ofcom guidelines as well. Custodian Bank's CEO, Catalin Long, commented on the significance of this event in the context of mainstream finance. She said, "We shattered the ground when it comes to the legal and regulatory aspects by demonstrating that the US banks can mutually tokenize demand deposits using permissionless blockchain in compliance with the law. The ability to tokenize bank deposits in dollars is a game-changing development for stablecoins, which are a type of a digital essentially currency associated with conventional national currencies or pegged to national currencies. The attempt to incorporate stablecoins on permissionless blockchains stems from backed stablecoins, which is a burgeoning phenomenon inside the crypto market space. Aviat Custodian stablecoin is a fully reserved stablecoin that exists in a form of a tokenized deemed deposit. This new class of digital currencies facilitates automatic transactions while incorporating essential transparency of banking technology and the regulatory safeguards of US banks' mandate. When discussing how blockchain technology can be useful in the banking industry, CEO of Vantage Bank, Jeff, said, "This milestone illustrates how the combination of blockchain technology and stablecoins can transform the payment realm and is a banner of events inside the financial industry. And this transaction allows us to give banks the responsibility to facilitate modernization through cross-border banking and take advantage of the power of the US dollars. The joint effort of Vantage Bank and Custodian Bank may be able to serve as a model for using blockchain integrated technologies within the governed financial institutions. The successful essentially transaction of that said stablecoins servers as a proof that stablecoins can be issued on permissionless blockchains compliant to regulatory standards, which makes it easier essentially for traditional finance to adapt the use of blockchain technology inside the United States, inside the banking sector." These are all test permits that were done, but it was successful, it was within the law, and it shows you that banks inside the United States can utilize cryptocurrencies now, staying within the law. There are certain laws there, obviously, to protect them so they don't go in gray areas. The CEO of Custodian Bank, Catalin Long, had much more to say concerning the project when she claimed, "I'll tell you, the impact is more on TraderFi, traditional finance. While crypto took some sandbox, the monetary story is in what Custodian Bank did with Vantage Bank. This reminds us of the importance of legal compliance to blockchain technology and the positive impact of traditional finance may have the adoption of such technologies while remaining regulatory compliant. With an increase in the crypto industry, with the cryptocurrency market and the adoption of new technologies in finance, it is only a matter of time before banks try to explore the option of tokenizing traditional fiat deposits on the blockchain systems, and the success of the Custodian Bank and Vantage Bank project will likely incentivize other financial institutions to increase their use of blockchain-enabled payments for securely and digitally regulated dollar payments. With blockchain, banks are able to essentially form a partnership to build a compliant digital payment system, emphasizing the need for regulations as the US dollars is heavily relied on the global governments. This could usher in a new era of international payments using stablecoins and blockchain technology." So, Custodian Bank essentially being the first US bank to do the testing, it was all successful, and they did it all within the law, which should give some sort of a green light to other banks, even though the OCC and the CFPB and the FDIC have come together to find lots of ways for banks to start utilizing crypto assets. But it should also give banks even a more broader idea that they can start some way utilizing crypto assets and staying within the law, because if Custodian Bank and Vantage Bank coming together can do it, should give some sort of a green signal to other banks. You could probably do it too, staying within the law, not crossing any gray lines. So obviously the news of Custodian Bank, on Ethereum's network, creating the Aviat stablecoin, great, all that is great. But the better part of it is it's giving some sort of, incentivizing their own words, to a green light to other banks. It's possible to stay within the regulations and launch. Now, Fidelity is what we're going to talk about next. So on yesterday's live, I released news that Fidelity is essentially, getting involved with Solana in terms of tokenizations and so on. And well, today we have news that Fidelity is also, just like Custodian Bank and Vantage Bank, thinking about introducing a in-house stablecoin, just like JP Morgan has as well. but JP Morgan is obviously private. It's not public, it's private, unlike the custodian bank one, Advantage Bank, which is public. And this is Fidelity's one. Fidelity Investments set to revolutionize crypto landscape with in-house stablecoin launch. In a significant move that underscores the growing, essentially, market space of traditional finance and blockchain technology coming together, Fidelity Investments, a behemoth in essentially the asset management sector with over $6 trillion in assets, is reportedly on the cusp of launching its own stablecoin. This development marks a pivotal moment inside the financial giant's foray into the burgeoning digital asset market space. According to a recent report, Fidelity's stablecoin is in advanced testing phases right now and is designed to serve as a digital cash within its upcoming Ethereum-based tokenized money market fund. This fund aims to offer exposure to US dollars and treasuries, positioning Fidelity in a direct competition with other major asset managers like BlackRock and Franklin Templeton as well, who have essentially also ventured into tokenization financial products. But they're not only doing that, they're also doing on the matters of tokenization is what they're really aiming for. The launch of Fidelity stablecoin is a part of a broader strategy to capitalize on the growing interest in cryptocurrencies and blockchain-based financial instruments. This move essentially comes at a time when regulatory attitudes towards cryptocurrencies are becoming more favorable, signaling a shift towards promoting crypto-friendly policies. Fidelity's stablecoin initiative highlights the increasing institutional adoption of blockchain technology now more than ever, and the company has also filed for regulatory approval to introduce Ethereum-based share classes for their treasury digital fund for their tokenization factor, just like BlackRock is on Ethereum as well. Now also through a third party is going to be tokenization of Solana as well, further solidifying its commitment to integrating blockchain technology into traditional financial products. As the stablecoin market continues to expand with major players dominating the landscape, Fidelity's entry could potentially disrupt the status essentially quo, and the total value of stablecoins in circulation currently stands at approximately $239 billion, with leading stablecoins essentially holding significant market share. And Fidelity's move into the stablecoin space is anticipated to occur pending regulatory approvals, and this timeline essentially aligns with the company's broader strategy to leverage blockchain technology for enhanced financial services, marking a significant step towards the integration of digital assets into the foray of mainstream finance. So not only is custodian bank essentially Advantage Bank coming together to create some sort of a public stablecoin, but we also have Fidelity, working and testing essentially on a public. In their words, they haven't said public or private, but they're creating some in-house stablecoin for themselves as well. It's nice to see massive behemoths coming together inside the blockchain space, entering more into the blockchain space is nice to see. Now, what we're going to be talking about next is another behemoth, but a behemoth that's behind Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, or known as nowadays Strategy. Before we go through that news, let's go inside the comment section. Before we go through MicroStrategy news, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, essentially what you're watching right now, which means if you do have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. More than happy to answer the questions you may have, or read out your statements if you have one. So let's go inside the comment section first before we read out the next news, which is regarding MicroStrategy and then where they're heading. But it's a perspective on MicroStrategy from Bernstein. So let's go essentially through the comment section before we go for the next news. We were at here. Scott, how you doing? Hello, Miles of CMF. How's everybody doing today? Scott, I'm doing great. Good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Sorry for being late. No problem. Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Hello to my CMF on YouTube. Let's go, Scott. Share the live. I apologize for being late. No problem, Scott. Good to see you, brother. How you doing? Mickey says, I'm confused. Why would these banks use Ethereum and Solana with all their inherent problems and cost, where XRP is faster and much cheaper? What am I missing? You're not missing much, Mickey. The reason why a few banks, or essentially a few institutions, decided to tokenize on Ethereum's network rather than essentially tokenizing on a project like XRP Ledger because it's cheaper, faster, and so on. Well, because XRP is technically still in a lawsuit. So it's difficult for these institutions, like a behemoth like BlackRock or essentially Fidelity, so on, to start working on the XRP ledger while it has an ongoing lawsuit. And they don't want to sit on the sidelines either. They want to be involved in some sort of a way, you know. BlackRock, Fidelity, you know, JP Morgan, 21 Shares, and such as Goldman Sachs, Citibank, all these major establishments, they don't want to be sitting on the sidelines either, you know, because XRP Ledger essentially is obviously a better alternative. It's faster, it's cheaper, and so on. And it's getting better at scalability as well. So the main reason is they don't want to sit on the sidelines. And they can't use a chain that has an ongoing lawsuit either. So it's either they sit on the sidelines, wait for XRP's lawsuit to come to an end, or they can start utilizing what technology is around them so they can have a better idea moving forward. I'll give you an example. Visa, for example. Visa used to use the Ethereum chain for essentially their test payments and essentially working on the Ethereum chain and scalability on Ethereum's chain. Then over time, Visa realized that Ethereum wasn't really the best choice for them. So they moved on to Solana, which it worked out better for them because Solana was cheaper and faster and so on than Ethereum. But what I'm trying to say is just because Fidelity or BlackRock or so on chose, you know, for example, Ethereum for the BlackRock fund tokenization, doesn't mean they're going to stick with Ethereum for eternity. They're going to add more chains to it or even replace chains. So just because they added essentially Ethereum as the backbone for their tokenization fund, it doesn't mean Ethereum is going to stay there for eternity. They are going to swap it around. So don't take it essentially as a, you know, as full throttle. Just because they've chosen Ethereum, it's Ethereum forever. No. If essentially they did have access to a better essentially piece of technology out there, they would most likely use it. Which is why essentially Ethereum's BlackRock build fund started out on Ethereum. Yesterday, announcement came for a third party. Solana is going to be added onto it as well because it's faster and cheaper than essentially Ethereum. But again, it goes back to, you know, XRP Ledger is 10 times faster, cheaper, more reliable, more secure, and it doesn't get congested the way essentially Solana does or Ethereum does. It's a better chain all around. Nobody can argue that fact. And the reason why these banks and institutions can't use it is because it has an ongoing lawsuit. But these banks and institutions aren't going to be sitting on the sidelines either. They want to be involved. So they get involved, they work on it, they have a better understanding of blockchain technology as the years go by, as the months go by. And, you know, once XRP Ledger is lifted from this lawsuit scenario, they can start utilizing that as well. Most likely they would 100%, because the amount of contracts that Ripple has in place, the amount of institutions that are going to be working with Ripple, the amount of companies that Ripple has brought out, and the licenses they have, they're bound to use it. They have no choice. But it just goes back to they can't sit on the sidelines either. They can use this time to have a better understanding of blockchain technology. And just because they chose one chain, it doesn't mean they're going to stick to it forever. Regarding, you know, essentially BlackRock and Fidelity and so on and so on. Hi, Miles, the CMF. Peg, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? So that's why, Mickey. Institutions soon don't have to go to the open market and buy XRP directly from Ripple in the chase. The price of XRP will not move. What is your opinion? So the perspective that institutions soon don't have to go to the open market to buy XRP directly because the injunction has been lifted from the XRP case, which means that XRP is allowed to be sold directly from Ripple to institutions. Is that a bad thing? Because then the price of XRP doesn't move. Incorrect. The price of XRP will still move. If, for example, let's just say the case is now dropped. Ripple versus SEC has come to an end. The case is dropped fully, and that, you know, the injunction has been lifted, which means Ripple can sell XRP directly to any institution or bank. The argument that the price of XRP wouldn't move because Ripple can sell XRP directly to institutions is invalid. For example, if Ripple sells XRP directly to Bank of America, and that news hits essentially the market space, that's going to uplift XRP's price. If the news hits that BlackRock is buying directly XRP from Ripple, that's going to impact the XRP price on a positive. If the news hits Fidelity is buying XRP directly from Ripple, it's going to impact XRP's price. It's going to add anticipation. It's going to add, you know, XRP's heading towards the right direction, has a bright future ahead of itself, and so on. So the argument that because if Ripple sells XRP directly to institutions and banks isn't going to do anything for the XRP price is invalid. It's going to do a lot of things for the XRP price. Because just think about it. News comes out. BlackRock buys XRP directly from Ripple. That's not going to impact the price of XRP in a positive way? Of course it is. News hits. Bank of America buys XRP directly from Ripple. That's not going to impact the price of XRP in a positive way? Of course it is. News hits. Morgan Stanley buys XRP directly from Ripple. That shouldn't essentially affect the price of XRP in a good way? Of course it is. So the argument of Ripple selling XRP directly to institutions and banks isn't going to help the price of XRP isn't valid, because it will. The slightest good news or bad news has impact on the market space. And a news like that will have a very big positive impact on the market space. So don't let people on X, there's a lot of people on X with a lot of different opinions. And they're not very bright. Not everybody, but a lot of people, not just on X, but there's a lot of influencers out there that are not very bright, and they don't like to think ahead of what actually could happen. They don't like to consider multiple outcomes. They see it as black and white. Ripple sells XRP to institutions, zero impact on the price. That's not how things work. Not saying that's how you think in any sort of way, Orphan, but that's just the perspective of some people have. Some people have black and white perspectives on the market space, which is the dumbest perspective to have. You should always have a multiple, essentially, outcome perspective on the market space, because if one outcome doesn't play, the other one's bound to play. But yeah, that's what I would say to people like that, Orphan, not to you. Just want to point that out as well. It's not towards you, the people like that who are thinking like that in any sort of a way. Thoughts of Renq, TAI, TON, essentially AX, BT. Scott, TAI, good. Celeste is good. TON, good. The other two, I'd have to look into to give you a better perspective on it, Scott. And I'll take a look after the live, and I'll get back to you. When do you think the entire XRP case will be over? My original estimate for when the Ripple case will be completely over and dusted with, I said my original estimate was the first quarter or second quarter of 2025. And I said this statement at the end of 2024, and I said it again on January 1st, essentially, not January 1st, but in January, beginning of January, I said it again, quarter one, quarter two. So I'm still sticking by quarter one, quarter two, because it actually is coming to an end in quarter two. By the looks of it, quarter one, quarter two is coming to an end. Because it had to. It never made any sense, especially when XRP made it to the crypto stockpile, being announced as the first token. Trump tweets out XRP as the first token. I said this, it's a major deal that he said XRP as the first token in his statement on True Socials. There's a reason why he said XRP first. I said this the moment he dropped. And I said it makes no sense, and it puts a lot of pressure on the SEC to drop the case even sooner now, because you have XRP, who's a part of the digital stockpile inside the United States, the first token to be announced on the digital stockpile, and then the SEC suing the XRP, while XRP is on the digital stockpile for the biggest market space in the world, a presidential order as well. So it put a lot of pressure on the SEC to close this case and wrap it up ASAP, because it's an embarrassment for the SEC to have an ongoing lawsuit of a crypto asset that's inside the American, essentially, digital stockpile, the first crypto mentioned inside the American stockpile, and mentioned also by the President of the United States. It was an embarrassment for the SEC. They had no choice but to wrap it up quickly. That just put more pressure on the SEC to just, quickly wrap it up. Is what I said, and I'm still sticking by that, because the pressure on the SEC is a lot, especially that Ripple is leveraging their political powers now, which as they should do. Because if you want to get ahead inside of, if you're a company that wants to do major takeovers, politics is where you got to get into. And Ripple realized this game, and so did Coinbase and a few other essentially major firms, when they start funding essentially politician campaigns, Republican politician campaigns. One of the reasons why you had a clean sweep of Republican politicians, Republicans in every category, was one of the reasons. When do you think? So that's quarter one, quarter two. We're still sticking by that. If I did not know better, I would say that this ongoing situation of XRP is designed to remove the retail buyers. It could also be designed in that factor as well. It is one outcome. Same scenario is for BTC institutions not buying the open market and price is not affected. Same scenario is for BTC institutions not buying the open market and price is not affected. If institutions purchase up XRP, thanks, no problem, Orphan, anytime. If institutions purchase up the XRP, then the price should increase, correct? Yes. The anticipation will help the price increase, yes. And what they do with it afterwards will also help the price of XRP increase. Now, strategy. MicroStrategy, a perspective coming out from Bernstein. They've came out and said, so this is Bernstein's top analyst at the research brokerage firm Bernstein. It's a big deal. It is Bernstein. And they've came out and said that what essentially Michael Saylor is aiming for through strategy is 1 million Bitcoin tokens is what this man is aiming for. So apparently, according to Bernstein, Michael Saylor is aiming for 1 million Bitcoin tokens. Maybe he wants to outrank Satoshi by himself, because the American institutions put together with all the ETFs, with all the Bitcoin ETFs put together in the US market space, together they outrank Satoshi. Single-handedly, they can't outrank Satoshi in any sort of way. So the idea is that Michael Saylor is actually aiming for 1 million tokens plus of Bitcoin, which would outrank essentially Satoshi's account. So now, Gontom, essentially a top analyst at research brokerage firm Bernstein, has updated Strategy's financial forecast. Strategy is a well-known, essentially, Bitcoin treasury company. This update comes after the company's Q4 financials, results, and recent Bitcoin purchases. The new forecast outlines 2 scenarios for the company's Bitcoin holdings, which depend heavily on market conditions in the coming years. Bernstein predicts that Strategy's Bitcoin holdings could increase to over 1 million BTC by 2033. Similarly, analysts believe that Bitcoin might reach $1 million by the end of 2033. This expectation comes from essentially the firm's aggressive plan to purchase more Bitcoin and its belief that it will value the asset in the long run. So they're trying to say that MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor believes that Bitcoin will reach $1 billion by 2033. And therefore, MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor is aiming for MicroStrategy to own 1 million tokens by 2033, when Bitcoin is going to be priced $1 million per token, and therefore he would have 1 million tokens. Bernstein's analysts also warn that Strategy's Bitcoin holdings may stop increasing if a bear market lasts longer after 2025. This will slow down Bitcoin's price growth and limit the company's ability to increase its Bitcoin's reserves. Now, a severe market downturn could also harm the firm's finances, leading to it to sell some of its Bitcoin holdings to stay afloat. Yes, obviously, if there are major market volatilities and everybody's going to get impacted, then obviously MicroStrategy will have to sell some of their Bitcoin, which could impact their portfolio. Now, this situation could impact the company's stock's performance and create more selling pressure in the side of the Bitcoin market space, rather than bring positive for Bitcoin. Now, while there is essentially an optimistic long-term outlook, the risk of market volatility and downturns are also significant. Recall that the analysts saw the possibility of Strategy essentially being added to the Nasdaq 100 index last year. This addition significantly increases the company's visibility and leads to significant buying activity. Meanwhile, the company's Bitcoin acquisition strategy continues to draw attention as Bernstein's analysts project that its holdings could swell to 4% of BTC's current supply by 2033. However, the naysayers mentioned that Strategy's plan is no longer unique and essentially holds no longer unique, and mentioned Metaplanet, which holds significant Bitcoin reserves as well. They also said that major other industry players and countries signaling interest inside digital assets, which potentially hints a future shifts in market dynamics also. And recently, the Bitcoin treasury company led by Michael Saylor acquired another 6,911 Bitcoins, bringing Strategy's total holdings of Bitcoin to over 500,000 Bitcoin tokens, as reported by CoinRise. Now, Strategy currently holds 506,137 BTCs, which is worth over $44 billion. The firm's unrealized profits is over $10 billion. Analyst emphasizes that this staggering profit is why Saylor remained a Bitcoin advocate. With this move, Strategy has approximately 2.4% of Bitcoin's total supply of 21 million tokens, and the company is inching closer to having half of Satoshi Nakamoto's estimated 1.1 Bitcoin holdings. It is worth noting that the firm has made this staggering accumulation in less than 5 years. So, according to Bernstein, Michael Saylor is aiming for 1 million Bitcoin tokens, or even more than 1 million Bitcoin tokens, to match par on par with the founder of Bitcoin, whoever it may be, or whichever agency it may be. But so far, MicroStrategy owns 2.4% supply in terms of supply of Bitcoin's 21 million token supply. Now, And he's only doing that because he thinks the price of Bitcoin is going to be $1 million by 2033. But now moving off essentially the perspective from Bernstein on Michael Saylor's movements inside the marketplace, which means that they have to continue to keep on buying moving forward in terms of Michael Saylor, to BlackRock. And staying on the topic of Bitcoin, BlackRock wants to expand its Bitcoin products to European market spaces. So here it is. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, has introduced its first BTC ETP in Europe. The new offering, called iShares Bitcoin ETP, is now available on exchanges in Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, according to essentially its company page. The Switzerland essentially product represents BlackRock's expansion into the European cryptocurrency markets following a successful entry inside the US Bitcoin markets earlier this year. This development comes after BlackRock essentially attracted more than $50 billion in similar products inside the United States. BlackRock was among the first institutional investors to offer exchange-traded products and tracking Bitcoin's spot price inside the United States. This occurred after the Securities and Exchange Commission approved such product back in January 2024. For the European Bitcoin product, BlackRock has formed a strict partnership with key financial institutions. Coinbase, as usual, will serve as its custodian, while the Bank of New York Mellon will function as the essential administrator. And according to information on this, all this information is coming out is according to essentially BlackRock's own website. Now, the news comes as also MicroStrategy trying to edge forward and trying to get closer to that 500,000 Bitcoins. BlackRock and essentially MicroStrategy are definitely going head to head of who can own the most amount of Bitcoin. Now, obviously, it's different because it's not technically BlackRock who's buying Bitcoin. It's the clients of essentially BlackRock who are buying Bitcoin, or people who are becoming clients of BlackRock who are buying Bitcoin. But in MicroStrategy's situation, it's actually MicroStrategy who's buying Bitcoin. So it's two different essentially scenarios. BlackRock's clients are buying Bitcoin, whereas Strategy is actually buying Bitcoin for themselves in their own portfolio. And one of them could cause volatile stages, one of them being essentially Strategy, because they are borrowing money, they're raising money against convertible notes, which have to be paid off later on to purchase Bitcoin, whereas BlackRock's clients, who knows if they're borrowing, some of them might be doing, some of them might be actually just using their own money to buy Bitcoin. So that's a different scenario. But retailers had previously reported on BlackRock's planned European launch last month. When essentially approached for comment on new products, BlackRock declined to provide additional information. The expansion showcases growing institutional interest in cryptocurrency products across the globe. BlackRock's essentially move follows several major essentially financial institutions that have created investment vehicles to give clients exposure to digital assets. BlackRock and essentially MicroStrategy have always been competitors inside the Bitcoin category. They've always been competitors in the Bitcoin category. But again, it is different. BlackRock has to rely on their clients and their reputation to buy Bitcoin through them, whereas MicroStrategy just keeps on raising money to buy Bitcoin. Now, moving off, essentially BlackRock introducing the Bitcoin ETP in Frankfurt, Paris, and a few other essentially European countries, to the IRS. Not only, just to point this out, not only are we getting so much positivity in terms of regulations being introduced towards the crypto sector and being voted on inside the United States, but also we're getting ridiculous regulations removed from the United States. One of them being this one, which is from the IRS. So under Biden's administration, the last week of Biden's administration, the IRS, with Biden's administration, passed a very, very stupid and moronic regulation, which was that DeFi, essentially platforms, will have to snitch on their users, the simplest way to put it. And this was squeezed through the last week of Biden's administration. With the help of Biden's administration and the IRS, they tried to find a way on how to, squeeze through a very moronic regulation and policy to be able to tax people even more. Because the whole point of the DeFi section is it's not supposed to be centralized. So As I said, not only are we getting regulations that are very, very pro for the crypto space, and we've never had them before, but we're also removing stupid regulations that were put in place under Biden's administration for stifling the crypto space. Here it is. A bill that will cancel the IRS reporting rule for DeFi platforms is expected to reach President Trump by Friday for his signature, according to Crypto in America. The Senate is preparing to take a second and final vote on the bill Thursday. And if it passes again, Trump is likely to sign it into law the very next day. The rule, known as the DeFi broker rule, was pushed through during the last days of Biden's administration. It forces decentralized crypto platforms to report user activity to the IRS the same way traditional brokers do. Critics say that this doesn't make sense for systems that don't actually hold user funds or run nodes. The rules of opponents say that it would damage innovation and force developers to essentially either break the law or leave the country, is what they were trying to do. The Senate already passed the bill once on March 4th with a 7-27 vote. That's more than 2/3, so it qualifies as a baptism supermajority. But under the essentially Constitution clause, budget-related legislations must start in the House. So even though the Senate voted first, it has to do it now again in the House to get signed off. The House passed the same Congressional Review Act (CRA) resolution on March 11th by a 229 vote to 132 vote. Ted Cruz, the Republican senator essentially from Texas, who introduced the bill, called the Senate vote earlier this month a victory for American innovation. His bill blocks the IRS from enforcing its reporting mandate against DeFi protocols. Cruz wants to make sure software developers and permissionless platforms don't get lumped into centralized entities. And the same exact bill is going through the Senate again on Thursday. If it passes, President Trump is expected to sign it into law on Friday, that DeFi platforms don't have to, hold users' essentially information and, alert the IRS on every single activity they do. That's being removed. And that was put into place under Biden's administration. The last few days of Biden's administration, they tried to squeeze that one in quickly so nobody will realize. That would make it the first crypto-related bill ever signed into U.S. law, the CRA mechanism that allows Congress to overturn recent federal rules. And this one targets the IRS rule directly. The IRS steals so much money from taxpayers, it's ridiculous. But, we have every country has their own version of the IRS, and they're all useless and money hungry. Now, moving off essentially this particular rule that's going to be removed and no longer stifling the crypto space, to US lawmakers reintroducing Securities Clarity Act for crypto. A lot of regulations are happening inside the United States. A lot of regulations are happening inside the United States right now. So here it is. US lawmakers. The Securities Clarity Act aims to provide regulatory clarity by distinguishing between securities and commodities, which is one of the major things that we need inside the crypto space. We need to know what is a security, what is a commodity, so that we know which categories for what when it comes to certain crypto assets. And there's no more confusion inside the market space. And, later on, any random lawsuits won't be popping out of nowhere. So that is why they're essentially going to be reintroducing the Securities Clarity Act for crypto, but this time in a positive way of actually defining it and not just essentially trying to say everything is a security. So initially introduced back in 2020, it targets digital assets addressing potential regulatory overlap affecting the crypto industry. Representatives Hemmer and Soto stressed the need for clearer guidelines when it comes to the crypto space. By clarifying classification criteria, the Act intends to foster innovation while ensuring compliance. This move reflects ongoing congressional debates on digital assets. The Act it reintroduces has received positive feedback from crypto advocates who see it as a vital step towards safeguarding innovation. because the less gray areas we have inside the crypto space, the better it is. Some, however, express concerns about potential regulatory loopholes that might hinder essentially enforcements. Experts suggest that the act could lead to significant regulatory shifts with potential implications for market stability. If successful, clear guidelines could boost investor confidence, potentially, essentially, helping with the growth within the digital asset sector inside the United States. As Tom Emmer, Majority Whip of the US House of Representatives, stated, so long as we lack a clear definition under the new law for what is a commodity and what is a security, American innovation will suffer. It's true. The faster we find out this is a commodity, this is security, the better it is. If we don't have this is commodity, this is essential security, and it's just going to create confusion down the road again. The Securities Clarity Act will help provide these answers and allow American investors to fully participate in the exciting technology without sacrificing consumer protections, because it will tell them, if you do this, this, and this, you are a security. If you do this, this, and this, then you're a commodity, and you know which category to stay in. Previously, similar legislative efforts have surfaced but faced hurdles due to evolving market conditions. The Securities Clarity Act is a reflection of ongoing attempts to balance regulations and innovations in a rapidly changing, essentially, industry. Experts from, essentially, Colonel Chain argue that the clear regulations could streamline industry standards, setting precedents for future directives. Historically, clarity in regulatory policies has fostered sustainable growth, ensuring technology advancements aligning with legal frameworks. So historically, in terms of having regulations that help and to bring innovations in terms of technology, having that regulation in place has helped it to grow whatever that technology essentially was in the past. So it should do the exact same thing for the crypto space once we get this regulation passed. It definitely should, because there's no more gray areas. Now, moving on essentially from the Crypto Essentially Securities Act to another regulation that's about to be passed. A lot of regulations are happening inside the United States right now. US House stablecoin bill goes live in a fury of crypto activity on Capitol Hill. So, the House version of stablecoin legislations was released publicly as another bill on crypto clarity was reintroduced, and the Senate essentially weighed in on the crypto IRS efforts. The US Congress opening essentially priority for crypto industries is to quickly finish a stablecoin oversight bill. And the House of Representatives has released the text of its versions, essentially, following in the heels of the recent committee approval of its Senate counterpart. The House of essentially Congress is right now processing a lot of regulations for the crypto space and removing some ridiculous regulations that were put in place to stifle the crypto space under Biden's administration. The new version essentially will close the gap, is what they're trying to say. So the House version, introduced by Rep. Brian Steele, who leads the House of Financial Services Committee Crypto Panel, and Rep. essentially also French Hill, the Republican chair of the overall committee, governs the way companies can issue dollar-dominated essentially digital tokens. The new version will close the gap between the House efforts and the Senate version of the bill. Steele said during a conference appearance, the Stablecoin Transparency and Accountability for Better Ledger Economy Stable Act, essentially is what they're calling it, is a strong continuation of our work on digital assets in the last Congress, Hill said in a statement. The Senate Banking Committee had already advanced its own versions of the legislations with a strong bipartisan vote, so it moves on now to consideration on the Senate floor. Rep. Tom Emmer, the House Majority Whip, who has been among Congress of top crypto advocates for absolutely years, said the two bills have some minor differences that I'm sure can be ironed out. Also, Tom Emmer reintroduced his Securities Clarity Act, which essentially we just went through right now, and the FIT 21 bill as well. Tom Emmer still and many other lawmakers involved in crypto efforts on Capitol Hill all appeared at the DC Blockchain Summit also, a crypto policy event hosted by Digital Chambers. Most of them shared hopes that the stablecoin effort would be essentially completed by August. And as the conference wrapped up, the Senate prepared for a vote for the second time on Congressional Review Act essential resolutions, overturning the IRS 2024 regulations for essentially the DeFi space. So Congress right now are discussing matters of removing the IRS regulation, bringing in essentially the Genius Act and the Stablecoin Act. They're going through which one should work out better, or we can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And essentially putting in place the Securities Act law as well, and a multitude of other regulations they're going through right now to see what they can remove to stop the stifling when it comes to crypto assets because of what essentially Biden's administration did. One of them being the IRS regulation. And the other one being, what can we pass to essentially bring in more, confidence towards the American market space when it comes to the technological advancements of blockchain technology. Now, moving on from the regulation news to one particular type of interesting news. So, this is a scenario that could play out. It's a scenario that's being talked about inside the crypto space for the longest time. This scenario has definitely been talked about inside the crypto space. Definitely for the longest time. Definitely for the longest time. And it's XRP and Swift. So there has been that, essentially article that was pushed around, which some state it was fake, some state it was real, and so on. But the debate of, is XRP going to be part of Swift has somewhat still been there. And this is what basically of a scenario, let's just say. So this was done by analysts, and here it is. Impact on XRP's price if it displaces Swift as a payment network. In a major development, American technology company Ripple Labs has opted for its payment technology over Swift, which is true. And it makes a lot of sense why Ripple would say, their system is better than Swift, even though Swift is a messaging standard, but their system is better in that category. Ripple has essentially claimed its technology moves money faster and at a lower cost, unlike Swift's slower, more expensive systems. Since settling its SEC case, Ripple has expanded in the US, signaling more banks in weeks than in the past few months. Brad, the CEO of Ripple, says Ripple can process transactions in minutes instead of days, unlike Swift, and they have a multitude, essentially, of licensings in place and a multitude of partnerships in place. We found out that particularly by the Ripple versus SEC case. Drawing on the positioning, if more banks switch to its network, XRP could become a more prominent player inside of international finance. Ripple has long positioned itself as a disruptor inside the digital payments ecosystem. Meanwhile, Swift, which has operated for over 50 years, remains the dominant player in cross-border payments. Despite many critics' opinions that the latter's technology has slow processing times and high cost, it remains that most use payments networks by banks. It is true, even though Swift is extremely expensive and slow, and small and medium-sized businesses don't tend to use Swift, so which means they never expand internationally due to the high cost of fees. Independent reports indicates that transactions on Swift can take several days, often requiring multiple intermediaries and expensive fees in between. Ripple, on the other hand, provides a faster alternative using blockchain technology. And through its on-demand liquidity service, Ripple enables near-instant transactions by converting one currency into XRP and back again. Its model involves transferring the coin across borders and covering it back into the destination currency it needs to be in. This eliminates the need for pre-funded accounts in foreign banks, reducing costs and increasing efficiency. Not only that, but also small and medium-sized businesses can benefit and expand internationally. In an interview essentially with Fox Business, Ripple CEO Brad mentioned that the recent legal victory against the SEC has allowed Ripple to onboard more US banks faster. So with the Ripple case and the SEC coming to an end, now they've both come to the conclusion of ending it and the injunctions being lifted by them, and SEC is walking away with $50 million from the escrow account of $125 million in it. So Ripple CEO is actually coming on, on a Fox Business News, mentioning in an interview that, Ripple has been able to onboard more US banks faster now with the victory from the SEC case. He revealed that in the 6 weeks following Donald Trump's election, obviously Ripple signed up more American banks and payment firms and combined in the past previous 6 months. A statement he essentially said previously before, but it's obviously a newer recent statements about that matter as well. Again, regarding they've signed a lot of US banks. According to Brad, this momentum proves that financial institutions are increasingly seeking alternatives to SWIFT's outdated system, because it really is outdated. XRP plays a crucial role in Ripple's ecosystem. It acts as a bridge currency for cross-border transactions. The XRP ledger allows for more secure, fast, and low-cost payments, making an attractive alternative for financial institutions. And unlike essentially conventional financial institutions, which require liquidity in multiple currencies, XRP makes transactions easier by enabling instant essential currency swaps. However, XRP has inherent challenges. Its volatility has raised concerns about essentially among financial institutions that are hesitant to rely on fluctuating assets for settlements. To address this, obviously, Ripple has introduced Ripple RLUSD as well, a stablecoin that complements XRP in transactions. The token helps provide more stability while maintaining the advantages of the blockchain technology also. And if you want to know how much essentially Swift moves per day, now what people are saying online is roughly about $5 trillion a day is what Swift would move. Obviously, on working on business days, they would move $5 trillion a day. Technically, from the data that was introduced by Citibank's report in 2023. Now, we don't have the reports of 2024 or obviously 2025 because it hasn't ended. But we do have the reports from 2023 through Citibank of how much Swift was moving. Even though it is a standing messaging service, however, net on net value, it was moving roughly about $7.2 trillion a day in business days is what Swift is moving. $7.2 trillion a day is what Swift is moving per day on business days. Just wanted to put that out there. Also, Swift is limited. Small and medium-sized businesses don't use Swift. XRP is 24 hours. Small and medium-sized businesses can also use the XRP ledger. And just on business days, Swift is moving $7.2 trillion a day. And there has been documents where essentially Ripple and Swift are named next to each other. And some documents of test purposes next to each other as well. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's either going to replace it 100% or Swift is going to realize they have no choice but to essentially start using the XRP ledger. And there are documents to prove that as well, some sort of a way, where they're mentioned alongside each other in cross-border payment documentations in the back of international settlements, or in test phases they're mentioned essentially next to each other as well. And also there was that article that was released as well, which some stated it was fake, some said it was real. But the reality of it is there are some people that essentially on X that are maybe frustrated about XRP in some sort of a way. And they're tweeting about, XRP, they're frustrated. Some people trying to jump ship. They think, it's Titanic situation or so on. And they're tired with all the good news that's coming out about Ripple, but the price doesn't move. One thing you have to realize right now is that we don't have regulations yet. We have some regulations, but we need more regulations. And they're all coming this year, by the way. Majority of them are coming this year. More regulations over the years to come as well. But the ones that we need to move forward is this year. And what I'm trying to say is that if you're somebody that is frustrated on your XRP tokens and you want it to move and you're tired and you want to sell and you're just thinking, you know what, I'm done with it, it's over, I don't care anymore about XRP, don't. It's not financial advice in any sort of a way. But my personal perspective, I wouldn't sell my position out, especially now, where this case is about to be ending, the multitude of licenses in place, multitude of contracts in place. Most importantly, this case is about to be ending. And essentially, what it's going to achieve next is going to be absolutely tremendous. And the relationship that Brad and Trump have, it's a very close relationship, if you've realized by now. Because XRP went from a token that was being sued into the ground by the SEC to a token that was mentioned first by the United States president on his tweets about which tokens are inside the American portfolio. Just simmer on that one. The close relationship, I'm telling you, that Brad and Trump have now, or Ripple and Trump have now, or Ripple and Trump's administration have now. XRP went from a token that was sued into the ground, no matter what, by the SEC and Gary Gensler, to a token that was mentioned first by the President of the United States. for America's portfolio. So if you're somebody that is stressed about their XRP or is thinking all this good news is coming out, nothing's happening yet, realize the bigger picture. On that note, we have reached tonight's live. So, excluding all the contracts, all the licenses, all the acquisitions they have in place, and the ETFs that are coming this year as well. So much is happening for XRP. Don't lose hope, don't lose trust. It's, in my opinion, the greatest asset inside the blockchain space. Obviously, Bitcoin maxis will tell you otherwise, but in my opinion, it's the greatest asset to be ever created in the blockchain sector. On that note, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. If you're watching this live for the first time ever and you're wondering what is this is called the CMF Live, and my name is Miles. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. And this live show that you're watching, I do this live show Monday to Friday, 11:25 p.m. UK time onwards. You can tune this live Monday to Friday, where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, and regulations. So if you watch this for the first time ever, subscribe. If you watch this on YouTube, if you watch this on X, follow me, tune in Monday to Friday. And everything I do and provide is completely free of source. And we're on episode 286 of the CMF Live. This is episode 286, which is incredible. Before we do go, let's go start the comment section first, and then we'll essentially call it a night. But before we do go, let's go start the comment section first. Let's see where we were, just in case I didn't miss out on anyone's comments. Would you ever consider running a node? I thought about it in the past, but I haven't done it. No. Would you ever consider running a node for passive income? Sure. I mean, if you want to run a node for passive income, why not? Honestly, would I do it? Probably somewhere down. I would have to, anyways, because somewhere down the road I would have to, because no, owning a blockchain software company, it's not really optional. I have to do it somewhere down the road. But probably, yeah. Obviously, if you want to go for it, why not? XRP equals commodity. Let's go, JP. So the IRS don't overstep their reach as they've been doing for years. Facts. We're going to IRS. DeFi rule being removed. Absolute facts. Max Soto, what are you doing here? Can you see essentially XRP £10 this year? Paul, anything's possible. Consider variable change. Honestly, anything's possible right now in this moment in time, especially this year. My cousin got into crypto and thinks they got him possessed by demons. He's in prison. To kill the kid, you come out with the weirdest statements sometimes. Good night, Miles, and all the CMF. Thank you for the great live and great news. JP, let's go. See you tomorrow, but at the same time as usual. Good night, Miles and CMF. See you tomorrow. Orphan, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Night, Miles and the CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Orphan, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Thanks, Legend. Great info as usual and timely reminder. We need to hold strong and not get shaken out by the FUD. We are getting closer each day, night and day, CMF. Let's go, Shelly. Facts. See you tomorrow, sometimes as usual as well. Outstanding live. Take care, all. Remember to like, share, and comment, and see you all tomorrow. Facts. If you already haven't, CMF members, please like this live. If you watch us on X, CMF members, if you already haven't, like, comment, share, retweet. If you don't want to share, you don't know who to share it to, like, comment, and retweet them. Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Stormy. See you tomorrow, sometimes usual as well. Thanks, Miles. Let's go. Thanks, Miles, again for another live and very informative information. I'm sure you definitely are an AI robot. Let's go, Addy. Addy, see you tomorrow, sometimes usual as well. Good night, Miles. Mike, see you tomorrow, sometimes usual as well. I'll be seeing everybody tomorrow. Night, Miles. Let's go, Callie. See you tomorrow, sometimes usual as well. I'll be seeing everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual. Thank you, Miles. Good night, all. Lena, let's go. See you tomorrow, sometime as usual as well. If you already haven't, follow. If you're watching us on essentially X, if you're watching me on X right now, follow me on X. Turn on your bell notifications. You'll be reminded when I go live. It's Monday to Friday, 11:25 p.m. UK time onwards. Essentially, you can tune this live. Night, Miles and CMF, brilliant show as usual. We thank you for your precious time. For what you share with us. Let's go, Joe. Joe, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. I'll be seeing everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual. Follow, subscribe, comment, like, retweet. I'll see everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you are around the world. CMF, see you tomorrow, same time as usual for episode 287 tomorrow. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual.